behind schedule today for today's right-wing extremist content, and it's not my fault this time. Actually, YouTube is to blame because they were experiencing some kind of widespread outage where you couldn't upload thumbnails and couldn't go through the creator studio. But anyway, 30 minutes behind. Make sure you guys give it a thumbs up on your way in. Appreciate y'all for being here. We're going to talk about briefly the recall or lack thereof. It didn't happen. We'll talk about this toddler getting kicked off of a flight that happened in the U.S., by the way. That's here in the country that it happened. You would think it sounds like something out of Australia, but this is, there's dangerous precedent that's been set, and they're just going to continue down this path. Then we'll talk about Mark Milley and his treason. What's the punishment for treason, by the way? Just curious. Oh, you don't have to answer that. But we'll talk about that and then some other issues. You got North Korea test firing missiles again. I believe the ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. And now Japan is launching a wide-scale military exercise. Lots of stuff happening today on this Hump Day Wednesday. Appreciate y'all for being here again. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. I see we got a few people in the chat. We got Joe. We got Swole Jesus. We got a couple people in here. Appreciate it. Man, I'll be, it's all good. I'll be excited to get back on the main channel. If nothing else, just because I'll reach a larger audience. So that's going to be this Friday. Fingers crossed. I'll be back this Friday. If not, it'll be Saturday or Sunday or something like that. But anyway, let's get to it, y'all. This is kind of, we'll start out with this. Gotta love Snopes. You just gotta love them. I mean, what would we do without Snopes fact-checking everything? So here's Snopes fact-checking. Did Biden take a photo with kids in Trump hats? Well, I don't know. Considering we saw the photo, it looks as though that's a fact check true. What does Snopes say? Fact check true, but the context is this is a genuine photograph because your eyeballs told you that. Not to just discount the fact that there are photoshops, but I mean, this is a real photo. While this image was widely circulated with the claim that Biden was tricked into taking this photograph, there's no evidence to support this assertion. The president referenced this photograph after the event as an example of unity and reportedly told the children before taking this photograph, "I believe in liking people even if they don't like you." So the unifier in chief, he's actually trying to unify us. So that's why he took a picture with kids. I mean, there's probably no other reason why he would want to be in a photograph with kids. I mean, it's not like he's ever, done anything like that. Also, in the photo, where is his right hand? I'm thinking it's right about here. If you guys can see the screen, I don't know how zoomed in it is. I can't really. Maybe here we go. Oh, I can zoom in. Okay, here we go. That looks like that's where his hand is. I don't really think that that's, hey. He's our unifier in chief. That's all I know. So anyway, Snopes called this out. Good thing Snopes is fact checking. Did Joe Biden actually take a photo with kids in Trump hats? Did that actually happen? It's good that they're fact checking that and not fact checking other statements that he's made about the efficacy of vaccines, about the keeping Americans safe and bringing them home and staying in Afghanistan, all of that debacle, the fallout from that. Good thing they're not fact-checking the mainstream media as they lie and traffic in fake news stories on a daily basis. Where was the fact check on the ivermectin story out of Oklahoma that gunshot victims weren't? I mean, that was Jussie Smollett level fake news. I mean, come on. But Snopes, they would rather fact check a photo that you can fact check with your own eyes. Anyway, that's a funny little thing there. These fact checkers that nobody seems to fact check, calling out that this is not a Photoshop. It actually happened, but he wasn't tricked. He was trying to show that we can be unified as he gives divisive speeches about how there's a pandemic of the unvaccinated and we're the reason that he has to clamp down on the entire country. This is the classic way to divide and conquer. make the vaccinated hate the unvaccinated and vice versa. But he's unifying us when he's with kids. Oh, yeah. And before I forget, let me show you one other funny thing. Oh, almost went to Facebook. Let me show you one other thing on my page. This is a funny little video. Interesting video of our grandpa in chief here. If I can pull up my profile here. Here we go. All right. Now, obviously, this is doctored, but, it's still creepy nonetheless. This is from 9/11. Creep.
This is like some school. How cool is this, right, Miguel? Why couldn't I go to a school like this? I mean,
looks like the kid really enjoyed it.
I love the mural. I mean, everything is just, I love this school. Anyway, Mayor Bowser and Chancellor Fairbanks.
And then just
thank you for joining us as well.
Just walks away. Where are you going?
And for families across the country.
And where does he think he's going?
You can't make this stuff up, you guys. You can't make it up. Biden gropes another child and then wanders off like a dementia patient. Yeah, sounds about right. Now let's talk about some good news. A few positive stories today. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants to replace outdated standardized testing with progress monitoring. It's going to be hard to put a negative spin on that one, but I'm sure they'll find a way. He crams down his authoritarianism on schools. Something like that. Something to that effect. But in reality, this is actually a bipartisan issue that, standardized testing sucks. And so now they're replacing it with progress monitoring, which means they're going to test when kids go into school for a baseline of what they know and then track it midway through the semester to see the progress, track it the normal way that you should do it. And then at the end of the semester, see how they did, see what they learned, see how far that they actually traveled. It's like a measuring stick to see, like, okay, how far did you go? Let's see what you know coming in. Whereas standardized testing, I guess, based on what you don't know. So anyway, that's a positive thing. Our governor's doing positive things that will not garner a lot of attention in headlines because there's no way to spin it in one way or the other. There's no way for conservatives to be like, yes. I think it's a great thing, obviously, but it's not like owning the libs or anything like that. I just think it's a good thing for students in the state. He's actually trying to raise the bar of education. As Florida's education pretty much sucks. It's one of the worst in the country, but he's raised teacher salaries, offered them bonuses. His only little tiff with the schools would be his anti-mask policy, which isn't even anti-mask. He's saying parents should choose. And that makes the most sense, right? Because if parents can choose, you're still going to have children in classrooms wearing masks because parents will choose that. But in a red county, like where I live, there was no reason for a mandate when most of the parents don't want their kids to have it. So anyway, other than that, he's doing a great job as governor. And this is something that even Democrats in the state support. Before the pandemic hit, actually, his poll numbers or his approval rating amongst Democrats was really high in the state because a lot of what he was doing with the environment, et cetera, et cetera. He is doing a great job. So this is a good non-political story that I think should, just wanted to share with people. So there's that. Now here's another good one. Judge blocks New York from imposing vaccine mandate on medical workers. Great. So that means those babies that are due within the next month or however long will be able to, be delivered at that hospital that was trying to fire people for not taking the COVID shot. I mean, again, if you're in the middle of a public health crisis, the last people you want to have a shortage of are the frontline healthcare workers, doctors, nurses. I mean, people that work in triage, people that work in surgery. Like, do you want to have a staffing issue at a hospital, period? Even without a pandemic, you don't want to have that, especially in a super populated state like New York. So anyway, judge blocks this. It's temporary. I'm sure there's going to be back and forth thing. And just there's a lot going on that doesn't really make a lot of the headlines. And I just kind of had to step back and realize that there's court battles. A lot of these mandates, a lot of stuff that's really grabbing the headlines and got everyone, buzzing about. There's a lot going on behind the scenes to fight that. So a lot of these mandates are tied up in court. A lot of judges are weighing in, blocking some of the mandates, especially for medical workers. They shouldn't be forced to get a jab to keep their job. Of course, nobody should, but especially when you're talking about hospitals, paramedics, first responders. I mean, it's just common sense. So this is a good thing. You've also got Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is suing various school districts across the state. And I believe that he's winning a couple of those lawsuits because, as you know, Texas has banned the mask mandate for schools. And of course, places like Dallas and Houston and Austin are going around the governor's order. Actually, it violates Texas law. So there's legal ground for lawsuits and all that. It's not just a decree somehow in Texas's law. Anyway, he's doing good work there, as well as pushing back on Biden's his vaccine mandate. So that's good. Maybe Texas has a better attorney general than Florida even. I don't know. I haven't kept up with Ashley Moody. I don't know what she's doing, but that's a good thing for Texas and for the country that these battles are happening. Okay. Right now, we got some of that positive news out of the way. Let's talk about the recall election. Nobody should be surprised. It was a long shot. It's still disappointing. It's people aren't happy about it. People wanted to believe that it was possible that Larry Elder could have won. And I know what everyone's thinking. I know. Audit. First of all, it would be a Democrat-controlled audit. So that's a non-starter off top. And secondly, it is a blue state. So even if you took out election fraud, even if there's no election fraud, right, it's still a very deep blue state. So it wouldn't be so far outside of the realm of possibility that even though Gavin Newsom is just awful, that he would still win. Because you think about the average like leftist voter, they're uninformed, and the people who campaign on the left know that. That's why they appeal to emotion. They use platitudes and applause lines and different slogans to get people all riled up to go vote without looking into the issues. So it's not really a shocker that he remained governor. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. I mean, if you think about a red state, like if a Republican governor, let's say the reddest state in the country, I believe is Oklahoma, like every single county voted Trump, every single one, even Oklahoma City and Tulsa. That's like a Democrat somehow winning a gubernatorial race in Oklahoma. You'd be like, what? No way. California, I mean, it's a different kind of situation because there are a lot of conservatives there. It's not as blue as even I previously thought, so it's not a shocker to think that there should be a closer race, and I think it was in terms of how many people voted yes versus no. I think they're still tallying up numbers, but Gavin Newsom's going to be retained as governor, and yeah, that sucks for California. I mean, it's basically conquered territory, and I feel like a blue state, once a state turns blue, it doesn't turn red again. I could be wrong. I haven't been alive long enough, but I know states that have been blue that used to be red have not turned back red. There's still states that are purple and they go back and forth. But generally speaking, if you're talking like from the governor all the way down to, I don't know, maybe even city council in some of the bigger cities, it tends to always be blue. So, I mean, when I grew up in Colorado, that was a Republican state. It was a red state. It voted for George Bush, and then it turned purple for Obama. Now it's a blue stronghold. Do you think Colorado is ever going to flip back and become red, even though it was traditionally a red state and there's still a lot of Republicans there? Just think about the influx of people who fled California. I've called it political arson. People purposely bring their policies and set them ablaze in a red area and destroy that place, make it very expensive. Now people are going to start leaving Colorado and they're just going to go east. They're going to go to Kansas. They'll go to Missouri. They'll go to Nebraska. They'll go wherever they can to, in a sense, some of them are fleeing those policies, but some of them know what they're doing. They're like, let's turn the other states blue. It's not enough that they get what they want, right? The policy they want, the politicians they want. They want everyone else to live under their same policies. They think that they're so like just egotistical, narcissistic. Our way of viewing the world is the way of viewing the world. Anyone else that doesn't view that way is, one of the names: bigot, racist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi, all the names. But to bring it back to this election, I feel like when a state turns blue, it doesn't go red again. Unless there's an example that I'm not thinking of. I know that in presidential elections, that can kind of change. I mean, we've seen that change over the years, where Ohio would be a blue state and then a red state, and then it'll have a stretch of red. Right now, it's a stretch of red. It's voted Republican the last 3 elections. But a state like California or a state like Minnesota, which the last time they voted for a Republican, I think, was Nixon. I think Minnesota's like the only state that Reagan didn't win. So California, it's not a shock that he won, even though there probably was fraud, and they were obviously panicked. They were obviously concerned that they could have lost. So even if it was rigged, it must not have been rigged to their liking if they were so concerned, if they had to, load up their arsenal of attacks for Larry Elder. They must have been concerned about something. I don't know. But anyway, here's Gavin Newsom on Twitter, extra chipper and jovial. He's like, it's a good day to be a Californian. Well, first, last night, here's what he said. Tonight, California voted no on the recall and yes to science, women's rights, immigrants' rights, the minimum wage, the environment, our future. We rejected cynicism and bigotry and chaos, and chose hope and progress. Thank you, California. Actually, that was a little Freudian slip there. They really do. I mean, this state, think about this guy, right? He's so arrogant, just cocky. He doesn't care that a large portion of the people in his state despised him so much that they had a petition going around that gained enough traction. He didn't think it was going to even gain enough traction. He was very dismissive of when it first happened. Like when they first started circulating a petition to recall him, he was dismissive then. And now that he's on the other side of it, he's not breathing a sigh of relief. He's not trying to extend the olive branch. He's just like, yeah, Californians said no to the bigotry. He's basically saying anyone who opposes his governance is a bigot, a cynic, or they are just they're a QAnon conspiracy theorist. They're a white supremacist. He literally blamed the recall on white supremacy and QAnon. That was in like a tweet. And Bernie Sanders actually echoed that tweet. I remember exposing that when it happened. I was just so shocked that this guy could be so cocky, so arrogant. So he's not even like saying, hey, Californians, maybe we can come together. I understand some of you don't support me. I would like to have a town hall. Obviously, he's not an honest guy. He's part of a little cabal that's been running that state for a long time. I told you his aunt is Nancy Pelosi, who's been in her particular seat for God knows how long, a very long time. They don't just have corrupt politicians. They have corrupt politicians that are deeply entrenched in their seats, in their districts. You can't dislodge them to save your life. I mean, who knows? Dianne Feinstein might just die from her seat. She's already talking about running for re-election, which is why it would have been huge if Larry Elder actually did prevail in this recall, because he could have easily replaced Dianne Feinstein with a Republican once, if and when that did happen. I mean, I know he would obviously have to run for re-election in 2022 or whatever, but still, that's besides the point. He's just very much like, let's get back to work. What work are you talking about? Your tyranny, your mandates, your draconian lockdowns, your destruction of businesses, your running the middle class out, your subsidizing poverty and drug addiction in the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles. your preservation of the status quo on Skid Row, your blatant corruption. Let's get back to work, back to business as usual. Nothing will change in California. If anything, it's going to deteriorate and get worse. So now I think you will see an even larger mass exodus of conservatives and Republicans because they've lost hope. They probably felt the most optimistic they could have possibly felt living in a deep blue state when this recall actually made it to the ballot. But now that they're on the other side of it, I think people are probably demoralized because you add on the 2020 election and how that went, and now this, and the fact that any fraud surfaced, any funny business surfaced, that just compounded onto what people were already feeling. So they probably feel like it's time to just cut our losses and go. And how could you blame them? Honestly, at that point, like, I didn't know at the time when I came to Florida that this would be one of the best, most strategic decisions I ever made in my life. I thought I was just coming here because the beaches and the warm weather after being in Minnesota. Little did I know I chose the very best state to live in based on my lifestyle, my values, my beliefs. And I will never live in a blue state again, ever. I'm not going back to Colorado. I'm not going back to Minnesota. I'm not picking another blue state. If I ever do leave Florida, I would go to another red state, probably in the sun belt, somewhere here in the Southeast. But people now are probably just going to really flee California, making it even just cementing the stronghold that it already is, meaning there would be little to no opposition, right? That really said something about the spirit of rebellion in California, that even though they know that they're in a deep blue state, they're still going to build momentum and try to recall this governor. Now, I don't know if you'll see a recall again. In fact, I don't know how long, I don't know what their state law is. I don't know if they have term limits, but I don't even know how many terms Gavin Newsom has done already. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him get reelected. Why? Because they measure success by failure. How do they do that? By gaslighting. As things are crumbling, as the world is on fire around the people who can see, they can paint a rosy picture of it and make it seem like, no, I know things look a little rough, but I mean, it's the GOP blocking our agenda. We haven't been able to do this. Or they'll deflect and say, hey, look at this really positive thing that we did do. Ignore the burning buildings, ignore the needles and feces and crime and carjackings and homicides. Ignore all of that. Look how we're tackling the pandemic. Look how we are cementing, as he called it, women's rights, immigrant rights, the minimum wage, the environment, our future. Your future looks bleak. What about your present? How can you talk about the future when the present sucks in that state? And then for him to this morning be like, it's a good day to be a Californian. He's just taking a victory lap. He feels like he just, like he didn't really escape anything. He's not humbled by the experience that he almost got recalled. I don't think that he lacks self-awareness. I just think he's that cocky. I just think he feels that much more like his power will go unchecked. In some states where you have Democrat governors and it's a blue state, you still have a Republican-controlled House and Senate. So there is a check on their power to some degree. You have some conservative appointed judges. They can't fully cram through everything they want. I think case in point would be like Michigan or even Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those are technically swing states. They're blue states really more than they are swing states, because Michigan and Wisconsin have been blue states for the longest, but they flipped red for Trump both times. But that's another story. But even though they have Democrat governors, they still have Republican-controlled House and Senate. And that's where I think you can really get the most work done in those states. Why isn't the GOP in that state doing everything they can to drive the governors out? Is this a go along to get along situation? Is this a quid pro quo behind closed doors type situation? I'm just saying. For them to wait so long to do these audits in the states, right? What's going on there? That's where I think you can make some headway in those states. If you live in one of those states where there's a Democrat governor, but there's a GOP legislature, Do something about it. Find out who those people are. Find out if they're serious. Primary them. Vote them out. And then, maybe those states could turn around. I don't know. They're not completely gone. California, I would say completely gone. Conquered territory, just like Oregon, just like Washington. It's really the coast. The whole West Coast, I would stay away from it. Honestly, I have no desire to go back. I used to want to visit San Francisco. I used to want to see Portland back in the day. Now I have no desire to ever go there. Unless, of course, it's for work or something. I don't see a reason to go. New York, I loved it. I'm glad I got to visit it, but it's a Democrat stronghold. It's not safe. It's not fun. It's not free. What's the point? I can look at the skyscrapers. I can tour New York on my phone. I don't need to actually go tour it in person. That's just the reality of it. It sucks. But the scary thing about all of this is blue states tend to stay blue. But can we say the same for red states? Will red states stay red? I mean, they're gunning hard for Texas. Hard. I don't think Ted Cruz beat Beto O'Rourke by that much. Now, Trump kicked Biden's ass in Texas, but that's not to say that things won't change. I mean, you count the influx of people fleeing California, setting up shop in Texas. Austin could be a very blue city in California. That blows my mind that the capital of Texas looks like a California city. It looks and acts and operates as if it's a California city. That's what's crazy. And that's in a red state. So all the people coming over from the blue areas of California, they understand because Democrats talk about it. They brag about them flipping Texas. So people, yes, you have people fleeing, trying to get away from California's oppressive policies. They want to go places more free. There are some genuine, I don't know if you call them expats or people that are fleeing California for Texas. There are people with good intentions that are like, I'm fleeing. I'm going to go vote Republican when I get there and call it good. But then you have people who feel some kind of obligation to move, relocate so that they can be a part of the change they want to see. They want to move to Texas so that they can vote Democrat and bring down that state and destroy it. On top of the fact that the borders are wide open and people are crossing every day, it's a matter of time before Texas could potentially turn. And Florida. Luckily, Florida doesn't have a border crisis issue. I mean, so there's that. I think Florida would take longer to flip, but not much longer when you have people coming down from not just New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maryland, a lot of blue states on the East Coast. They're moving to Florida in droves. Granted, a lot of them are older, so they're near retirement. They want to move down here so they can keep more of their money. But a place like Texas, where you have young, wealthy California liberals moving there, they're trying to flip the state. So I think Texas is pretty vulnerable. A lot of red states that you would think are strongholds, they're not really strongholds. So what's the problem there? There's some kind of disconnect where a blue state will stay blue, but a red state supposedly somehow doesn't really stay red. I don't know. Louisiana has a Democrat governor. How did that happen? How does a state like Louisiana, a state like Kentucky, have a Democrat governor? I don't know. There's funny business there. So anyway, I'll move on from this. This is just, it's frustrating. And it's not my state. It's not something that I have to think about that, California is going to stay under dictator Newsom's control. Larry Elder said that, he just gave the typical statement of defeat. Like, yes, we lost the battle, but we're going to win the war, whatever that means. I don't really know what that means. It's just, I don't know. You got to say something after that. And I mean, it's not so much like he lost because he wasn't even on the ballot until people actually voted yes. If it was do you want to vote Newsom or Larry Elder? I think it could have been different. I don't know. I really don't know, but that's it. I guess we'll move on from that. Let's talk about the big story, which you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. And I don't know how. Maybe it's just because it's so new. I think this story is actually from yesterday. So a toddler with asthma was kicked off an American Airlines flight. I don't know. Maybe this article is going to say where that flight was coming from, but I followed the person's friend on Twitter, the mother's friend, and she said something about there in Colorado. But American Airlines admits they kicked 2-year-old off plane for refusing mask. Mom says kid had asthma attack. I mean, the flight actually turned around. It was already midair. It's not like they were just boarding and seating and whatever. That flight was in the air. They turned around and flew back because a 2-year-old having an asthma attack wouldn't keep her mask on. You can't make this up. So, and American Airlines confirmed that this happened. So in a statement to National File, American Airlines admitted that they booted a 2-year-old off their flight for not wearing a mask, despite mother saying he, not she, he had an asthma attack. And there's some footage with it too. So I'll play the footage, but I'm going to mute it because the kid is struggling and crying. So it says, I'm going to just pause it and read it to you guys. So it says, I was not refusing. Let me start over. Okay. I was not refusing a mask, nor did I even say I wouldn't try to keep a mask on my son. We were escorted off the plane as I was holding a mask over his little face. I genuinely don't have words. So this is the mom. I'll fast forward a little bit. You don't need to hear it, guys. It's just, it's too heartbreaking. But the kid is crying. He's crying and he is having shortness of breath. So this next part says, he got on the intercom to say to the entire plane, I'm sorry for the delay, but we are dealing with a non-compliant traveler. So trying to build resentment within the flight when anybody who is sitting next to the mother, even if there's some like branch Covidian, I would think some of them might have a little sympathy. Maybe I want to have a little bit of faith in humanity here and say that somebody who would be an earshot or somebody sitting next to her would sympathize or empathize with the fact that her child is crying in the middle of a flight. That's stressful for the kid, stressful for the mom, stressful for everybody involved. But then when you find out the kid has trouble breathing, who knows? She might be somebody who's super duper pro mask. You know, this is sad, man. How did we get here? I mean, when are we going to turn the tide? This is completely unacceptable. You're kicking a toddler off. Oh, yeah. And here's the worst part. They had cops waiting for her on the other side of the flight when she got back. Now, maybe I can turn up the sound here because the kid isn't really crying anymore. Hold on. Well, maybe the kid is crying. I don't know if we can see anything. Thank you for your bravery, Carl, on flight A1244, 1284. So I don't know if the employee that harassed this mom is going to be fired. I think American Airlines is probably going to back the employee. That's it. I can't hear it. I can't hear it. But that's the video of the entire situation. And it's just, this is wild stuff. So I don't know what legal action the mother can take because it's their policy. The policy is obviously really stupid. Mask a toddler that you can't even get to sit still. A 2-year-old. You can't even get a 2-year-old to sit still on a flight, let alone get them to wear a mask. And then when they're having a health episode, a health emergency, I would add, because they're at however many feet, 15,000 feet. I don't know how many feet you fly at. I don't know. You have a child, a 2-year-old in a constrained situation, crying probably for a multitude of reasons. And then the mom is trying to force the child to wear a mask because the stewardess or flight attendant is forcing her to force the kid to wear a mask. So she tried to comply against her, I guess, conventional wisdom. Like, it just doesn't make sense that you would do that to your child anyway. And then when you see that the child has an asthmatic episode, which she tried to tell the stewardess or flight attendant of, I'm assuming, I mean, obviously wasn't there and it's not in the video, but I mean, you can pretty much conclude that that's probably what she did. Like, hey, my kid has asthma. It's not that we're anti-maskers. But imagine being a psychotic flight attendant. Do you make enough money to do that? To force a woman to force her child to wear a mask when the kid is freaking having an asthma attack? And then you go snitch to the pilot and make it seem like, oh, this anti-masker in the back row is just being defiant. And so the pilot jumps in. He doesn't have all the context and says they're turning the flight around. And then on top of that, you call the cops. What is she going to be charged with? Not child abuse? Not abusing her child? Ugh, man. These people are psychos. On what planet does this make any amount of sense? I mean, unless you're going to say this is some photo op, this is staged. There is the inhaler right there. The kid has asthma. And this is American Airlines, in case you were wondering. American Airlines. Unbelievable. So apparently, yeah, in a statement to the National File, American Airlines confirmed that they removed a 2-year-old boy and his family for not wearing a mask from a flight Monday, despite the fact that he had an asthma attack. American Airlines did not mention the attack in their statement. That's convenient. I wonder why they wouldn't mention that. Terrible. Terrible stuff. But if I just continue talking about it, I'll just get more angry. So we'll just move on to this. Again, if we're in a public health emergency, a public health crisis, a pandemic, if the sky is falling, unless we fall in line, get pharma products, listen to everything the government says, if that's the situation, you need to close the border and you need to maybe not resettle Afghan refugees. Virginia and Wisconsin report measles cases amongst refugees. Yes, measles are in the United States. 6 people who recently traveled to the United States after fleeing the Taliban in Afghanistan have been diagnosed with measles. The cases in Virginia and Wisconsin are being reported 4 days after the U.S. halted inbound flights of Afghan evacuees following the discovery of a few cases of measles among the new arrivals. So you waited until you got them here, found out they got measles, and then you're like, oh, wait, we got to halt all the flights. We got to halt the flights. We got measles coming over and God knows what else. Instead of checking, vetting every single person that boarded a flight that was paid for by my money and your money, by the way, instead of vetting all those people, making sure that they weren't terrorists, making sure that they actually had visas or that they were American allies or not radical terrorists, criminal records, all of that stuff, you could have vetted all those people before they boarded a flight and came over to the U.S. But instead, you wait until they bring measles here. And I even saw a story from a few weeks ago where a sex offender came over too. Like, this is our government and we're supposed to trust them. This level of incompetence could not be written in a Hollywood script. This is like a comedy. This is like a bad comedy sketch. As they're cramming down their policy on you, cramming down all these health measures on you, you have to get vaccinated. It's mandatory. But people coming over from Afghanistan, we don't even have to check their background. They're not wearing masks. They're not vaccinated. They're bringing over measles. They don't have to get vaccinated once they get here, and they could just move about the country freely. But you can't. You have to be locked down. And we're going to increase SNAP benefits to refugees, which, comes from your taxpayer money. So measles is spreading in Virginia and Wisconsin that we know of, and wherever else the bases are. I think there's a base in Texas. I think there's maybe one in Utah or something like that. There's a map that shows you the bases that they're being flown to. But my gosh. One case was confirmed September 5th at Fort McCoy, an Army base in western Wisconsin that is temporarily housing 8,000 people as they prepare to settle throughout the country. When they say throughout the country, they mean swing states. They're going to be strategically resettled in purple districts, red areas, blue areas, places that are vulnerable. They're going to look at the numbers and see, okay, how close were we to losing this seat in this county, this district? Okay, let's resettle some refugees here. Let's get them registered to vote Democrat. Let's get them all set up with SNAP benefits. Let's make their life nice and easy. And then when it comes election time, we can remind them who put them in that situation and they can vote accordingly. That's how it works. That's what they're going to do. That's what their plan is. So they're in Wisconsin now, but they'll be going to Michigan and Pennsylvania, and they're going to look at the counties that Trump won, and they're going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. They're going to strengthen their stronghold. I was listening to Tim Pool earlier. One thing he got right, I disagreed with like 90% of his video about the recall election. He was right, spot on about how Democrats have a strong ground game. They do. They have a strong ground game. They control, unfortunately, all of the institutional pillars of our society that influence people to vote. Hollywood, academia, mass media, social media. They control the messaging. And not only that, they can censor, subvert, silence everybody else who opposes them. They can literally purge dissenting voices from the military. So they have a lot of power right now. And unfortunately, with Grandpa in Chief in the White House, Mr. Potato Head, he's bringing over these refugees and labeling you, of course, a bigot. You're an Islamophobe if you don't want measles coming to your community and whatever else may be along with them. Their health standards are not quite the same as ours. That's putting it mildly. So anyway, you've got measles here in 2 states that we know of, and I'm sure there's going to be measles outbreaks. Who knows? I know so little about measles. Somebody will have to tell me in the comments if you know. What's the last reported case of measles? Like, what's the last reported death of someone who contracted measles in the United States? That might be worth a quick Google search. I'm just curious. So, yeah, they're bringing over measles. They're bringing over COVID for sure. We don't know how many variants. We know that for a fact. And they don't have to get vaccinated when they get here. Congress doesn't have to get vaccinated. The post office doesn't have to get vaccinated, but you do. And somehow that's scientific. Ugh. Guys, the Twilight Zone. We're deeply in the Twilight Zone. Taxpayer money. And then on top of that, man, we left all the money. Oh, okay. Whatever. All right, let's move on to Mark Milley. Woke Mark Milley. White Rage Mark Milley. You know, I didn't even know who Mark Milley was until his White Rage comment. But this guy should be locked up. He should be at the very least investigated. He should be fired. He shouldn't even have a job after what just happened in Afghanistan. But now that we know he made phone calls to China to warn them, to say, hey, I'll warn you if we attack so that you can be prepared. If that is not the textbook definition of treason, then there is no definition of treason. You're gonna arm an adversarial country with information that would help them circumvent our efforts to control their global tyranny takeover, because they've been super aggressive the past couple years. If you haven't noticed, they conquered Hong Kong. They're aggressive towards Taiwan. We already know that they've got Hollywood by the balls in the NBA. You got freaking John Cena apologizing in Mandarin for acknowledging Taiwan as a country. They control a lot of levers of power here in the United States as it is. But now they've got military intel coming from Mark Milley, and his stupid little justification apparently is that he was worried that Trump was going to nuke China. Right after January 6th, Trump is going to nuke China. Right, the guy that didn't start in a war at all. His entire 4 years, we experienced so much peace around the world, which is a good thing, by the way. Even if you have Trump derangement syndrome, how can you look in the mirror and be like, well, Trump did it. I'd rather have war from Biden than a mean orange tweeter that keeps the peace around the world, engages in diplomacy. I don't like it because he's orange and bad, and tweets mean things. So I'd rather have an old, decrepit, dementia-ridden dude that sniffs children and maybe starts wars, gets people killed at the very least. I'd rather have that than Trump. So there's Trump derangement syndrome people out there. Milley is one of them, clearly. And how did he know that Trump was going to try to bomb China, nuke China? Nobody believes that. That's fake. That is so fake. So, yeah, undermine Trump. And I guess Pelosi was in on it. I don't know. A lot of this is unfolding. And apparently there's some people who were in that meeting that are willing to testify against him under oath. That's all fine and dandy. That's cool. But here's the thing. Here's the reality. Just like Fauci, just like Cuomo, just like Newsom and Whitmer and Murphy and Wolf, the people who put COVID-infected patients in nursing homes, just like the Clintons, just like the Bidens, Hunter Biden, these people fear no consequences. Do you think for 1 second that Mark Milley is going to see a day behind bars? Do you think he will be held accountable? I mean, it sounds depressing to talk about, but I'm just saying what's true. I'm just being a realist here. The soft coup d'etat was against Trump. That was the coup. And apparently they were successful at it. You know what's so wild is for the people that followed the QAnon accounts that were talking about there's military white hats. They're working to fight the deep state. No, that was an inversion. That was an inversion of what actually happened. What actually happened was the deep state was fighting internally to take down Trump, lock up Trump supporters, put you on no-fly list, label you domestic terror threats, compare you to the Taliban, set you up on January 6th, and now calling it worse than 9/11. That's what actually happened. And it boggles the mind that some people still actually follow that. I get it. It's hopium. You want to hope that there's good guys in government. And there are, but there is no covert military operation fighting the deep state. They're going to arrest John Podesta and Nancy Pelosi. Any day it's going to happen. The Clintons are going under. None of that's happening. None of it's happening. Fauci's free. All these people are free. Tom Perez, free. Everything that should have happened didn't happen. In fact, the opposite happened. And Mark Milley is a perfect example of that. How he was working behind the scenes to undermine the president, the sitting president, as he was getting kicked off social media. It was a big concerted effort. So it sounds like the way I'm talking, it sounds like everything's just hopeless, right? It's not hopeless. Don't get mad at me for saying it. I'm just saying it because it's true. I'm not saying it to try to will it into fruition or will it into existence. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying what's actually happening. That's what's real. But if people stay vigilant and recognize that good will prevail over this evil, all this evil is being exposed. So you got to kind of find the silver lining in the situation. All of this evil is being exposed for the world to see. We just have to understand that there are some people who are incapable of seeing it. No matter what you show them, they will not wake up. There are some people, but there are some people who will see stuff when you show it to them. When you show it to them, they'll see it. And the enemy knows that. That's why they're trying to hide and disappear information that will expose them. That's why you have so much censorship. Think about how long it's been since Alex Jones was kicked off. That was 2018. That was the straw man that they needed to go on a censorship blitz, and it hasn't stopped since. So they've deleted so many YouTube channels, Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, and they got really bold and aggressive in January when they removed a sitting president from social media. And to this very day, they're blaming him and you for the events on January 6th. They've amped up their rhetoric. They're coming after you with medical mandates and tyranny. There's military officials, the highest ranking military officials are feeding information to a country that wants to be the hegemonic superpower of the world by 2050. And they're well on their way to doing it. They got their guy in the White House that they love. Trump was being aggressive towards them. And that's why you had more peace You had more peace around the world because they were afraid of somebody who was unpredictable and meant what he said. Somebody who was tough. They feared that. Even China feared that. The tariffs, remember the tariff wars and all of that? Remember they were like, oh, Trump and his trade wars, this is stupid. Well, look at China now. They unleashed this havoc on the world with Fauci. All that corruption, these people aren't going to face any consequences. They don't fear any consequences. That's why they don't care that they get on TV and lie to you every single day of the week. On days that end in Y, there's a lie flying out of the mouth of Fauci, of Pelosi, of Biden, of all these mainstream media bootlickers, from MSNBC to CNN to even some people on Fox News. That's the reality, guys. These frauds, these hypocrites, we're just going to continue to expose them and just know that they may escape justice in this world, but they will not escape judgment on the other side. That's pretty much all I can say about it. So I'm going to start to wrap this up. This is probably one of the better live streams I've done in recent memory. I want to read a few comments and then I got to call the dealership and see if my truck is ready yet. Somebody said, and twice on Sunday, DM said, please make sure you follow Mike, please. Yeah. Follow me on my original channel. Yeah. We'll be back over there on Friday. Lord willing. I'll know as soon as I wake up Friday if I can live stream on the main channel. This would be a great time though. If you have come over to this channel, but you didn't know about my main channel, make sure that you click the link that DM just put in there. Sub to that channel as well. It's very important that you're sub to both channels and have both notifications set. That way, no matter where I go live, you'll be good to go. Some topics are going to be too spicy to put my monetization at risk, so it'll be over here. And then what I can do is maybe take little clips that are not as spicy and put it on the main channel. I'll figure out a way to effectively incorporate both channels going forward, especially for the rest of this year, because I'm skating on thin ice. 90 days. If I get another strike in 90 days, that's it. They'll disappear me from the internet because of my, right-wing extremism and my medical misinformation. I'm just out here preaching hate and fear. Someone said, R.I.P. Norm MacDonald. He was so funny. I wasn't familiar with his work at all. My buddy sent me some information on him. I don't know if it's like information. He just said he was in some Adam Sandler movies, which I did watch a lot growing up. But he doesn't look familiar. But the fact that people are saying he was a good guy, I'm assuming he was. I don't know if he was George Carlin funny. I don't know how you would rank him in terms of that. I didn't see any of his stuff, but sad. Rest in peace. I wonder if he just died of cancer or if maybe there was some medical procedure involved. I don't know. Won't go any further than that. I'm just saying, I wonder. It makes you wonder. You're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to say what Big Pharma does to you. You can only say good things about Big Pharma. That is the only thing you're allowed to utter on social media. You can't tell your story if a pharma product didn't turn out the way you'd hoped. That's the reality. And when someone with a big platform like Nicki Minaj does, gives the testimony or tells the story of people who may or may not have been affected by a pharma product, she gets the worst kind of treatment, the condescending treatment. To her credit, she hit back. She didn't bow. She didn't bend the knee. That's what I think I love most about it. Now that I reflect on the Nicki Minaj situation, what I love the most about it is that she stood up to it. She didn't say, I regret that I, misspoke. This was very irresponsible to use my platform this way. No, she tripled down. She hit back against Joy Reid, pulled up receipts of when she was an anti-vaxxer and when she was homophobic also, just exposing her hypocrisy. That's why I said that's expert level exposing of these frauds. She also, I forgot that she also hit back at Meghan McCain. She told Meghan McCain, excuse my language, she told Meghan McCain to eat shit. I thought that was funny because Meghan McCain overstepped her boundaries. Like, who invited Meghan McCain to this? Nobody cares about her. But she stepped in and was like, that's enough internet for today, Nicki Minaj. Anybody that pretty much came after Nicki Minaj, she hit back. She wasn't going to be bullied. And that was the whole point of her tweet. Don't be bullied. Do your own research and decide what's best for you. She was actually being very responsible with her platform. And then all these blue check marks come after her from the press. I think Piers Morgan was going after her too. She hit back on Piers Morgan. It's just, you love to see it. I hope we see more of that. Joe Rogan is someone else that can't be bullied. Kanye West famously said, what did he say? Liberals can't bully me. Remember when he put the MAGA hat on and the entire world stopped? Like they could not believe what they were seeing, what they were witnessing. How dare he step out of line? There's something wrong with him. He's mentally ill. They condescend. They think you're just dumb. Get back on that thought plantation. You're not allowed to talk out of turn. My name's Joy Reid. I'm really smart. I'm smarter than you. Shut up and get back in place. Nicki Minaj wasn't having it. Kanye wasn't having it. Joe Rogan's not having it. Rose McGowan's not having it. I'd love to see these celebrities, even if it's just for a minute in time, they are pushing back. They're exposing the truth. They're shining a light on some, and they have the biggest following. Joy Reid was complaining that Nicki Minaj had more followers than her. Well, thank God. Thank God Joy Reid doesn't have more people to lie to, more people to spread her propaganda to. That's a good thing. Nicki stood her ground. You love it. You love to see it. It's a feel-good thing. I feel good just talking about it. Just hearing about, or not hearing, but just reading all of her tweets. I was looking at the tweets again this morning, how she hit back. And you may not agree with her method. She wasn't very eloquent as far as how she addressed it, but that doesn't matter. Just like the college kids yelling F Biden. Who cares? Who cares if they yelled F Biden or we don't like Biden? Doesn't matter. The point is they're voicing their displeasure. They're making their voices heard. Now, if we could turn that into action, not violent action, but action, protest, mass civil disobedience, take all of the people in a college football stadium and put them outside of a government mansion or just on marching through the streets like they do in other countries. I don't know why they're trying to discourage it. See, what they want to do is use January 6th to say anyone that calls for that is calling for insurrection because they're trying to snuff out the First Amendment. They don't want civil disobedience. I've seen the videos of people in New York City marching across the Brooklyn Bridge. And while that's good, it's not that impressive. New York City has 8 million people in it. There's got to be at least 1 million, if not 2 million people that are concerned citizens that don't like what's happening in their city that could be marching. It could be so much more impressive. Think about Hong Kong. Remember when Hong Kong protests exploded in 2019? Hong Kong, I believe, I think their population is on par with New York City. I want to say it's like 6 to 8 million. They had like 1.2 million Hong Kong citizens in the street protesting against China. And who better than Hong Kong to know how close tyranny was to their borders? You don't think they know that China's basically going to get to just absorb them and strip all of their freedom away soon? So they're doing everything in their power, at least they were doing everything in their power to combat it, to raise awareness. So I would love to see that here. It just seems like New York City, maybe it's just building up for that, but I don't know. I could see it waning because you think about it, as we get into the colder months up there, people aren't going to just be out and about. They might, but it's not going to be to the extent it could be now. We're still in September. I'm shocked that there aren't tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in New York City protesting. We need to see it. Dragon says we have to keep doing it anyway. Yeah, it's so true. Just have to keep going. That's about it. Okay, wow, we're at an hour already. Sweet. Okay, cool. Yeah, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. please be advised that this will not be uploaded until about 15 hours later, because YouTube, they're having all kind of glitches, man. I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know if it's them suppressing my channel or they're having widespread outages or a little bit of both. I'm guessing it's a little bit of both because other people are experiencing the problems. And yeah. In my Telegram post, let me clarify this real quick before I go. I posted an article on Telegram that said Biden's, let me just pull it up on my phone so I can read it exactly verbatim. It says, genealogist finds evidence showing Biden ancestors owned slaves. And so I put impeach and shared it. But I was being sarcastic. Like, I don't think that's an impeachable offense. I'm just saying, like, impeach. Because we all know if this was Trump, there would be impeachment articles right now. That's a fact. They would impeach Trump over that. They would try to investigate. So I just think it's funny. It's the people that talk about all this stuff and they, and it come to find out, and it obviously it doesn't matter, but it come to find out they're guilty of what they accuse others of. The people that, like, for example, Sheila Jackson Lee. Every time she's up for re-election, she talks about forming a commission to study reparations because it's the perfect carrot to dangle in front of black people to get them to the polls. Unfortunately, it works still. To get them to the polls to vote for her. Right? But she's always talking about reparations. But what if we found out that her ancestors owned slaves? Some black people did own slaves, yes. Or what if we found out her ancestors weren't slaves? But I think it'd be better if her ancestors did own slaves, because it'd be ironic and she would have no choice but to shut up or start paying up. That's what I mean. That's all. That's really the only thing. That wasn't me saying, oh, I think he should actually be impeached. I mean, you guys, I would think people should know me better than that, but I guess I didn't specify, hey, the following statement is sarcasm. There's only so much you can do to show that you're being sarcastic on when you're not actually talking. Anyway, I've babbled enough. I'm going to let you guys go. I will be back tomorrow with more right-wing extremist content that you love so much, that's just radicalizing you. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks to the moderators for being here consistently. We'll shoot for 12 p.m. tomorrow. Hopefully that works. But if not, I mean, we'll get through it. We'll figure it out. All right. God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next stream.